kingdom was quiet that night, but inside the great stone castle, everything felt heavy and restless. Queen Alara sat alone in her chamber, the weight of her crown pressing harder on her than the gold itself. She was young, strong, and proud, but her heart was often lonely. The palace was full of people, yet none of them truly understood her. The nobles bowed, the servants obeyed, but there was no one who spoke to her as a person. She longed for something real, something honest. Ethan, a soldier who had returned from war, walked through the courtyard. His clothes were plain, his boots worn, but his back was straight, and his eyes carried the calm of someone who had faced danger and survived. He had no titles, no fortune, and no family waiting for him. The war had taken too much, leaving him only with scars and memories. He came to the castle only because he had been ordered to report to the queen's court. He wanted no trouble, he only wanted to be free of the palace and live a quiet life. When Ethan was brought before the queen, he expected cold words and quick dismissal. Instead, Elar's eyes lingered on him. There was something different about the way he stood. He did not bow too low, nor did he tremble before her. His voice was steady, plain, and honest when he answered her questions. For the first time in years, someone spoke to her without fear. That caught her attention. Later that evening, Alara walked alone in the garden to escape the noise of the court. She found Ethan there, standing under the old oak tree, gazing at the stars as if the night sky belonged to him. At first, she wanted to send him away, but something stopped her. She asked what he was thinking. He told her about the stars he had seen during battles, how they gave him hope when the world seemed lost. His words were simple, but they carried truth. They spoke for a long time, longer than either expected. She laughed softly at his dry humor, and he listened when she spoke of her burdens. For a moment, queen and soldier disappeared, leaving only a man and a woman sharing their hearts. The walls of rank and duty fell away, replaced by something they did not name, but felt strongly. As the night grew colder, Ethan knew he should leave. It was dangerous for him to be seen so close to her, dangerous even to speak so freely, yet Alara did not send him away. She looked at him with a softness no one else had ever seen in her eyes. In that quiet moment, the space between them closed. What began as words became something deeper, something both tender and forbidden. Hours passed and dawn crept across the horizon. Ethan rose from the bed where he had found himself beside the queen. His chest felt heavy with fear and confusion. He had broken rules no one dared to break. He had shared himself with a woman the world called untouchable. He looked at her sleeping form, her hair loose across the pillow, her face calm in rest. He wanted to believe it was just a dream, but the warmth of her touch told him it was real. Ethan dressed quickly. He told himself he could not stay. A soldier had no place beside a queen. If the nobles learned of this, his life would be worth nothing. He planned to slip away before the castle fully woke, to disappear into the countryside where no one would find him. He thought it would be best for her too, to forget that a simple man had ever stood so close to her heart. But even as he reached for the door, he felt the pull of something stronger than fear. The memory of her eyes, her voice, and the way she had looked at him kept him rooted for one last moment. He whispered a quiet goodbye, though she did not hear it. Then he stepped into the hall, unaware that his attempt to leave would not go as he planned. For the queen had already stirred, and her anger would rise with the sun. The first light of morning touched the towers of the castle, but inside the queen's chamber the air was heavy. Alara opened her eyes and saw the empty space beside her. The sheets were cold. Ethan was gone. For a moment her chest tightened, had left her as if their night had meant nothing. Her heart, usually guarded behind walls of pride, ached with anger and confusion. She rose quickly and called for her maid. Her voice was sharp, her movements faster than usual. She dressed not as a soft woman, but as a queen ready for battle. She could not allow herself to feel weak. She was the ruler, and no man, soldier or noble, would walk away without her word. In the halls, Ethan moved carefully. He kept his steps quiet and his head low. He hoped the guards would not notice him leaving through the servants' passage. He told himself he was doing the right thing. He was no prince, no nobleman. He was only a soldier with scars and a past full of pain. He believed the queen would forget him quickly and return to her world of power and duty. He whispered in his mind that this was best for her. But the castle had many eyes. A servant saw him, then a guard. The news reached Alara within minutes. Her anger flared. She ordered that the soldier be stopped at once. Her voice echoed in the throne room, cold and sharp. The guards obeyed without hesitation. Ethan's escape was cut short. Before he could leave the gates, steel blocked his path. He stood still, his hand close to the hilt of his sword, but his heart heavy. He knew fighting the Queen's men would mean death, so he raised his hands and allowed himself to be taken back. His thoughts raced. He had wanted to slip away quietly, but now he was a prisoner in the palace. Alara waited for him in the great hall. Her crown caught the light, her eyes blazing with fire. She did not look like the woman who had laughed with him under the stars. She looked every part the queen, proud and unyielding. When he was brought before her, she stood tall, her voice carrying through the chamber. "You thought you could leave without my word," she said. Her tone was steady but full of heat. "You thought you could touch me, then walk away as if nothing happened." Ethan lowered his head. He had no answer that could ease her fury. He wanted to tell her he had left to protect her, that he was not worthy to stand by her side. But the words caught in his throat. Before her, he was not just a man. He was the one who had broken the unspoken laws of crown and subject. The court whispered among themselves. Nobles, ministers, and guards all watched with wide eyes. Some were shocked, others eager to see what punishment the queen would deliver. The news would spread quickly beyond the walls, and the kingdom would know of the queen's anger and the soldiers' boldness. Alara stepped closer to Ethan. Her voice lowered, but her words carried weight. "You will not leave. Not now, not ever, unless I allow it." Ethan felt the truth of her words sink deep into his chest. His plan to vanish had failed. He was bound to her, not only by what had happened between them, but by her will as queen. He could not fight her command. He could only bow his head in silence. As the nobles whispered louder, Alara raised her hand, silencing them. She declared that Ethan would remain in the palace under her watch. He would not be sent away, nor would he be executed. Instead, he would serve near her, where she could keep him close. The courtiers exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared to challenge her decision. That night, when the hall was empty and the torches burned low, Alara sat alone again. She touched her stomach and felt the quiet stir of new life within her. The truth had not been spoken to anyone yet, but she knew it would not remain hidden forever. Her anger at Ethan's attempt to leave came not only from pride, but from the fear of facing this truth alone. The child inside her would change everything. Ethan, locked in his chamber under guard, stared at the ceiling. He wondered what fate awaited him, thought of her eyes, of the way she had looked at him both with fire and with softness. He knew his life was no longer his own. Whatever path lay ahead, it would be tied to hers. The queen had stopped him from leaving, and now his story was bound to hers in ways neither of them fully understood. Days passed, and the castle grew tense with whispers. The queen's choice to keep Ethan close shocked many. The nobles doubted him, the servants feared him. Yet Alara stood firm. She had commanded that he remain, and no one dared to disobey her. Still, she knew respect could not be ordered. It had to be earned. If Ethan was to stay by her side, he would need to prove himself worthy not just to her, but to the entire kingdom. Ethan felt the weight of eyes on him every step he took. Guards watched him as if he might rebel. Courtiers sneered as if he were dirt beneath their feet. Even the servants whispered behind his back. He had been a soldier, used to danger on the battlefield. But the silent war of the palace was different. Here, no sword could defend him. Only his actions could. One morning, Alara summoned him to the training grounds. Soldiers were gathered there, ready to test him. She told him plainly that he would fight, not for blood, but for respect. Ethan nodded without protest. He had faced worse. He would not back down now. The soldiers stepped forward one by one, strong men loyal to the crown. Ethan fought them with calm skill. He did not strike with hate, but with discipline. Showed control, never striking harder than needed, never losing his balance. By the time the last soldier lowered his weapon, there was silence. The men looked at him differently. They saw not just a stranger, but a fighter who carried honor. Alara, standing above them, saw it too. Her anger had not faded, but her trust began to grow. Ethan had shown he was no coward. He would not run again. That night, in the quiet of her chamber, Alara thought deeply. Her child grew within her, a secret she had told no one. She knew she could not hide it forever. The thought of facing the truth alone frightened her. Yet when she remembered Ethan's steady eyes, she felt a strange comfort. He had flaws, yes, but he also had strength. Still, her pride would not let her admit it aloud. The court was restless. Some nobles pressed for Ethan to be punished or banished. They claimed the queen's judgment was clouded. Others waited silently, watching to see how events would unfold. Alara, however, made it clear that Ethan's place was beside her, at least for now. She was not a woman to bend under pressure. Her word was law. Ethan continued to train with the soldiers, eat among them, and sleep under guard. Slowly, their eyes softened. They began to respect him for his skill and discipline. Even those who had mocked him grew quiet. The palace respect was rare, but he was beginning to earn it. One evening, Alara called him to walk with her in the gardens. The air was cool, and the stars stretched wide above them. She asked him why he had tried to leave. Ethan paused before answering. He told her he had feared he would bring her shame, that his presence would stain her crown. He said he had left not because he cared little, but because he cared too much. Alara's heart stirred at his words, though she kept her face calm. She told him sharply that she was not a woman to be abandoned. If he thought she was too weak to face scandal, then he knew nothing of her strength. Yet her voice softened at the end. She said that if he truly wished to stay, he must prove his loyalty not only in battle, but in trust. He nodded, understanding. As they walked back toward the castle, Alara caught the faint sound of whispers beyond the walls. She knew enemies were stirring, waiting to strike when the kingdom seemed divided. She also knew her child's secret would soon come to light. Trouble was near, and the storm would test them both. Ethan looked at her, his face calm, his eyes steady. He did not know what trials lay ahead, but he felt ready. For the first time since he had tried to leave, he no longer thought of escape. His path was set. He would stay, he would fight. And he would prove to her and to all that his place was by her side. The kingdom was restless. Whispers of the queen's secrets spread faster than fire through dry fields. Though Alara had not spoken of the child, rumors ran from the kitchens to the taverns. Enemies beyond the borders listened closely. They saw weakness in the crown and prepared to strike. The court grew divided. Some nobles wanted Ethan gone, others waited in silence, hoping the queen would stumble. Alara, though proud, could feel the storm building around her. Ethan sensed it too. The soldiers had begun to look at him differently. They no longer mocked him, but many still did not trust him. He trained harder, fought longer, and showed with every move that he was ready to protect the kingdom. He no longer thought only of himself, thought of Alara, of the child she carried, and of the duty that now bound him to both. Yet doubt lingered. Would the people accept him? Or would they see him only as a stain on the crown? One evening a messenger rushed into the great hall, his clothes torn, his face pale with fear. An enemy army had crossed the border. They were moving fast, seeking to take advantage of the kingdom's unrest. The court broke into panic. Nobles argued loudly, each blaming another, none ready to act. Alara silenced them with a single command. Her voice was steady, her eyes burning with fire. She declared that the kingdom would stand and fight. Ethan stood at her side as she spoke. She turned to him, and in front of the entire court, gave him command of a unit of soldiers. Gasps filled the hall. To give such trust to a man of no title shocked everyone. Yet Alara's will was unshaken. She told them that true strength was proven in action, not in bloodlines. The nobles bowed, though some with clenched jaws, and the soldiers prepared for battle. The enemy came swift and hard. Their banners darkened the hills, their swords shining in the sun. The clash began outside the castle walls. Arrows cut the sky, shields clashed, and cries filled the air. Ethan fought at the front, his sword moving with calm precision. He did not fight for glory. He fought for the queen, for the unborn child, for the chance to prove that he belonged. During the battle, an assassin slipped through the chaos and reached the queen's tent. Alara was alone, watching the fight from a distance. When the shadow moved against her, she turned just in time to see the blade. Before it struck, Ethan was there. Blood spilled across his arm as he caught the assassin's strike. With a swift move, he brought the enemy down. Alara's breath caught as she looked at him, wounded but unbroken. For the first time, fear touched her heart. Not fear of losing her crown, but of losing him. The battle raged until the sun fell, but the kingdom stood strong. Ethan's courage inspired the soldiers, and they drove the enemy back across the border. Cheers rose across the field, though many were too tired to lift their voices. The victory was hard, but it was theirs. When Ethan returned to the Queen, his arm bound with cloth, the soldiers followed him with respect in their eyes. They bowed to him, not as a stranger, but as one of their own. Even the nobles could not deny what they had seen. He had saved their queen, fought for their land, and carried himself with honor. Whispers that once spoke of scandal now began to speak of loyalty and strength. That night, Ilara sat in her chamber, looking out over the dark fields. She thought of the blood spilled, the lives lost, and the man who had risked everything for her. She touched her stomach once more, feeling the life that grew inside. Her pride had always told her to stand alone, but her heart whispered that she did not have to. Not anymore. Ethan, resting in his chamber, thought of her too. He remembered the fire in her eyes, the fear that had flickered when the blade came close, and the way she had looked at him afterward. He knew the battles ahead would not only be against enemies outside the walls, but against doubt and tradition within them. Still, he was ready. He had made his choice. His place was with her, no matter the cost. The days after the battle were filled with silence and thought. The castle walls stood strong, but the kingdom was not the same. The people spoke of the soldier who had saved the queen. Some praised him, others questioned his place. The nobles whispered louder than ever, fearful of what his closeness to the queen meant for their power. Yet Ilara ignored their doubts. She had seen with her own eyes the courage that Ethan carried. He had bled for her and for the land, and no voice could erase that truth. Ethan walked through the courtyard each day with his arm still healing. The soldiers greeted him with respect now, nodding as he passed. Once they had mocked him, now they followed his example. He trained beside them not as a commander above them, but as one of them. His presence gave them strength. Still, he felt the weight of the noble's eyes, cold and sharp, waiting for him to stumble. One evening, Ilara called for the court to gather. The hall was filled with lords, ladies, soldiers, and servants. Torches lit the high walls, casting shadows across the stone. Ilara stood before them, her crown gleaming, her face calm but strong. Beside her stood Ethan, plain in his soldier's clothes but tall and steady. Murmurs filled the air until she raised her hand for silence. She spoke clearly, her voice carrying through the chamber. She told them of the battle of the assassin who had nearly ended her life, and of the soldier who had saved her. She said that strength was not measured by bloodlines, but by loyalty and courage. Then she placed her hand upon her stomach, and for the first time she revealed the truth. A child grew within her, a child who would inherit the throne. The hall shook with voices. Some gasped in shock, others argued in anger, and a few bowed their heads in acceptance. The nobles demanded to know who the father was. Ilara looked at them with fire in her eyes and answered without shame. The father was Ethan, the soldier who had stood when others would have fled. He was no scandal, she said, but the man she trusted with her life. Ethan stood in silence, his heart pounding. He had not known she would speak so boldly, yet he felt pride swell within him. The whispers in the hall rose higher, but Ilara did not bend. She declared that the throne would not be weakened by tradition or fear. It would be strengthened by truth, by love, and by the courage to stand against the old ways. The soldiers cheered first, their voices breaking the tension. Then the servants followed, clapping their hands and crying out in support. Some nobles still frowned, but even they could not deny the strength of the queen's words. Ethan bowed his head to her, not as a servant, but as a man who now stood beside her in full light, no longer hidden in shadow. That night the castle was alive with talk. Some spoke of scandal, others of hope. The people in the streets began to chant Ethan's name along with the queen's, telling stories of the battle and the bond between them. The kingdom was changing. Slowly. The old walls of pride and tradition were cracking. In her chamber, Ilara sat by the window, looking at the stars. Ethan stood behind her, quiet but steady. She told him she had no regret in speaking the truth. He told her he would never leave her again, no matter what storms came. Their eyes met, and for the first time, there was no crown, no rank, no distance, only to hearts bound together. The days ahead would not be easy. There would be more battles, more doubts, more enemies waiting in silence. But they would face them together. The queen, who had once stood alone, now had someone beside her, not as a servant, not as a shadow, but as her equal. And Ethan, once only a soldier, now carried the weight of a kingdom and the promise of a new legacy. Their story spread far and wide, becoming legend. People spoke of the queen who defied tradition, and the man who proved his worth not through title, but through courage. It was not a tale of scandal, but of strength, love, and the future they would build together.